All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight under your brain. What are you talking about today, Sebo?
Well, I think this is going to be a fun one. Depending on who you are, you're going to be like, oh, Sam's a bleeding heart liberal or Sam's a misogynist. One of the two, or probably both in the same episode. But we're piggybacking on what we did last Wednesday. Because we kind of alternate. If you're new to the channel, because we've got like 10 new subscribers here in the last couple weeks.
Ooh.
We're working our way to 100, so keep it going. 100's like the next landmark, and these things build. They exponentially build. So just you don't have to share it online and expose yourself. Just tell somebody. But yeah, we're going to talk about. We talked foreplay last time. We brought in clips from the Sex Doctors, who is also another good new channel. If you haven't checked them out, and it's exactly that, the Sex Doctors. And we're going to piggyback on that. We talked about it from a female perspective because that was their episode we were
Hmm.
clipping from, and it was the wife in the pair. They're both doctors. One's a therapist and one is a urologist who deals with the functional sex stuff. And so she was talking about it from a female perspective, and it was all on foreplay. So check that one out if this is the first time you've seen our channel. But we're going to talk about it from kind of the male perspective now, and we're going to take two angles on that. One is going to be just, hey, what revs up males and stuff like that. And the other is going to be, well, there is a slight double standard in relationships these days,
Hmm.
ever since the industrial age, uh, where actually romance kind of started being pushed forward into what it means to be married versus a partnership between two adults trying to live and have children and be functional, right? So uh, we're going to dive into that a little bit because over time that created a double standard. Uh, but yeah, you know what? Let me start us with a quote from Chris Williamson. It was actually, I'll share this on the screen. It was very fitting because right before this popped up on my feed, and I was like, "Hey, that's what we're talking about today." So good follow on X if you're on there. Chris Williamson, his channel is Modern Wisdom. The first he has two here in a row. The first one is if a woman has a problem, we ask, what can we fix? What can we do to fix society? If a man has a problem, we ask, what can men do to fix themselves?
Yeah.
So yeah, that I mean, if you're a guy, you know it, and if you're a woman, just think about it for a little bit.
Hmm.
And then the second part is marriage matters. Marital quality is far and away the top predictor of life satisfaction in America. Specifically, the odds that men and women say they are very happy with their lives are a staggering 545% higher for those who are happily married
Hey,
compared
Sam, you're
to,
taking high level, graduate level statistics classes. Is that a significant number?
well, we would call that a giant effect size. Remember, significant means it just can be, it would, the results are dependable. It doesn't mean that it has a high magnitude. Effect size
Mhm.
is where you get exactly how much it matters. So for instance, study COVID studies where they brought forward, the child studies, and it was one versus two kids got sick in these arms and that ended up having statistical significance. But one versus two out of thousands is no magnitude,
Mhm.
right? But 545% difference. You could drive a semi truck through that Cohen's D. Okay, so it's
So, it's interesting that because this is kind of out of order, but one of the things I wanted to bring up today that I kind of bit my tongue on last time because we were talking from the female perspective or to the female perspective because we're not babes, clearly, um, is that what's kind of funny about what Dr. Marianne Brandon was saying is she was basically saying exactly what Dennis Prager said 10, 15 years ago, and the left media lost its ever loving mind and accused him of, they were running these headlines that said, Dennis Prager says husbands can rape their wives.
hmm.
All he said is he used to do a relationship segment on his radio show at a specific time, a specific day of the week, and he would take a segment to do relationship advice because he'd been married a very long time and he recognizes that's important to Williamson's point. Um, both common sense important, but also statistically we can show, oh yes, very important. And a woman had written in saying something to the effect of, my husband always wants sex. I'm not always in the mood. What do we do about this? And he basically said, look, is your husband a good husband? Is he out there during the day doing husbandly things, doing what it takes to earn a living and maintain a household? Is he good to you and your children? Well, then you should want to reward him, because that's what that is for a man. That is a reward, to say, you have done your masculine duties. Now let me reward you. So, what does it take for you to get in the mood, to use your words? What would it take to get you in the mood? Now, okay, do those things. And if it's something like Dr. Brandon was saying, something you do yourself with yourself, he didn't go into the details that Dr. Brandon goes into, but if it's something to do, mentally, what does it mentally take? Do you need to say, hey, husband, can you do these, can you help me with these couple of things? Don't overwhelm him with, I need you to check all these boxes or you don't love me. But, you
That's
know,
where it gets dangerous. And with he
yes.
waded into water that is very, very dangerous. You got to be careful how you word things. But also I might expand on it in a little bit from what you're saying, because the check boxes thing is actually a trap a lot of husbands get into.
Mhm.
They approach, as we semi talked about last time. So this will be a little review. They get to 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night and they both sit down in bed and it's bedtime, but they're like, okay, I did all the things I had to do today. Let's have sex.
Mhm.
And that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works, right?
Yeah,
And
as we said last time, and the doctors did as well, it is easier for men to flip the switch, but it's
well,
still
and
not immediate,
it's
and it's still not
also
as satisfying.
it's also an expectation from the guy's perspective. You're like, okay, once I start, I'm going to be okay. When it doesn't work that way,
Yeah.
it's better when you're in the mood,
It's
even
also
even
more
if you can still get it up when you're
satisfying
not, right?
from both sides, not just in the immediate of, oh, that the immediate gratification of that was really good sex, but then the long term, and you can talk the witchcraft if you want to on this, the long term, what it does to your mental state, what it does to you biochemically, to say, oh yeah, that was really good, if you've actually had good build up to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Well,
not just, oh, because in the back of your mind as a man, it's, yeah, she's not that into me. She's just, checking a box here.
hmm
That
well, and
that
that's
is
it.
not
You
going to
can
be
feel it.
satisfying long
So
term.
yeah, if you checked the boxes to get the box check uh sex, then it's going to feel exactly like that. Yeah,
Hmm.
you still might get off, but you might as well pop yourself off. Okay. So
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
but so I'm going to say a lot of things in this episode that if you take one sentence, you can clip it however you want
Hmm.
and make me look however I want. And they're going to sound contradictory together, but if you put it all together as a big picture complex system as we are as humans, it makes a lot of sense. Okay. So one statement I'm going to make right off the bat, which is the one everybody's going to clip if we were important, is a woman who withholds sex from her husband is as bad as a husband who cheats.
Hmm.
Okay. Because it's the same result. It is it is denying that thing that should be something a happy couple does together.
It's also kicking you where it hurts,
Mm-hmm.
because the denial of sex from the man's perspective, that is, you are not man enough to satisfy me, and the cheating is from the womanly perspective, I'm not good enough to hold your attention.
Mm-hmm. And
And
this
that's
is
what really hurts the female psychologically, emotionally. So you're kicking each other where it hurts.
well, and this is also where cross-sex mind reading comes in, to quote the term that David Buss uses. Evolution of Desire is his book. When a man cheats, the woman thinks of why she would cheat. When a woman withholds sex, the man thinks of why he wouldn't want to have sex.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you have to not think that way. So when the man
That's a good point.
strays, he's probably looking for variety and he has no intention of leaving. He probably was in a hormonal moment or it needed variety and all these doesn't justify it. I'm just saying the whys, right?
Yeah.
But she's thinking he's leaving me for another woman. Now, when a woman withholds, the man is saying, I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. When realistically, she's not in, there's something in her mind that is not right for her to be in the mood, unless she's doing it maliciously. So let's push that one aside as exceptions to the rule. Just normal relationship stuff here. No evil Machiavellian shit. Okay. So when she's not in the mood all the time, the guy gets into the mode of what did I not do? What box did I not check? Well, the box you didn't check was actually just getting her in the mood.
Hmm. It's why I think her point on scheduling, like actually scheduling sex, and it doesn't have to be, 11 p.m. sex. Put it on the calendar, literally.
Mm.
Okay, but
How
if you
about
schedule
11 p.m. date night?
exactly,
Yeah.
if you have couple time, if you have date night, or sometimes it can be literally one we need to do it. It's been a while because, life and kids. And I don't remember who I heard make this point a while back, but, you know, I can attest to this anecdotally, personally. When your kids are at a certain age and you've got a lot going on, uh, waking up early is can be better than trying to stay up late after you've put the kids to sleep.
Uh,
So if you are in a rut as a couple, that is an option as well. That worked for us. At a certain point, it was, yeah, we're just too freaking tired between work and all the kids' activities, but we get up earlier than the kids to get ready for the day and get them ready for the day. So getting up a little, you know, just a little bit earlier, and a guy is okay, cool, got it, all right, and especially if that is a mutual thing. To your point
mhm.
earlier, is you know we're doing this. It's not all right, fine, you can do this.
Okay, so I'm gonna make another two statements back to back that again will sound maybe a little contradictory, but it's kind of been piss off the other side now. So where Prager kind of got himself in deep water there was, and this is maybe the liberal side of me or whatever, expecting wifely duties
Hmm.
or I will leave is rape. Do this or I will remove myself from the situation. And if you're dependent on me, now you have to do it. And
Uh-huh.
that's what a lot of people are screaming right there, right? Because in the trad relationship, the breadwinner is the male. The female may have a job, but she's still not the main breadwinner and takes care of the children. And if man uses I will leave, if you don't do this, that is coercion. Okay, so that is not consensual. But on the flip side, this is where it's going to sound contradictory. If you are withholding, whether it's because you're just not in the mood or you're doing it out of malice, eventually man will stray or leave.
Hmm.
So both things can be true at once. If you use it as a weapon, it is coercion. If it happens because of the situation, then you're shifting the blame. Okay.
Yeah.
So those two things can be true at once, and we have to be aware of both.
And the good doctors got into that point as well, as they were kind of, they didn't address it directly, but that was kind of what she was saying. Is it, you know she brought up a few times, going back to their car analogy, is at one point you were all revved up to go. At what point in your relationship you were always at 20 or 30 miles per hour ready to floor it and get on the highway. So there's not nothing there. So what has
Well,
happened?
on
So
on average about 18 months. Oh, I'm trying to remember the chemical that releases in your brain, and it releases for about on average 1 to 2 years, so on average 18 months. And the problem is when there's a mismatch in one
yes.
person's at 1 year and one person's at 2 years, then you have a year of conflict, right?
And
EPA, ethylphenylalanine. There we go.
that sounds like a byproduct that you're throwing out in your distilling process. Jeez. Um,
If it was the byproduct of the distilling process, I would bottle that shit.
we're rich.
We're
All right.
rich.
But her point was, look, we're not talking to young, we're not talking to that first year couple, that puppy love, that excitement level. We're talking to the you've been together for a while couple, which means there's enough there that you have stuck around. So if there's enough there that you've stuck around, then there's enough there that you would want to keep each other happy. And so, Guy, to Peterson's point, that the
I got it backwards. It's uh phosphoethylalanine, PEA, not EPA. PEA.
all
Sorry.
right,
That's what books are for, people. You don't have to know everything off the top of your head.
yes, good job, nerd.
Yeah.
But if there's enough there for you to want to keep each other happy, then female, understand what your man is thinking and where he's coming from and what he wants in this relationship. And man, understand what your woman is thinking and where she's coming from and what she wants from this relationship, so that you can figure out how to keep each other happy, which is
Hmm.
clearly something you would want to do, or else you would already be gone.
I think the key word is effort.
There's that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, this is where Prager was in deep water and he didn't represent himself as well as he could have because he brings it from a certain perspective, which is kind of a this is what it's traditionally like and this is how it works.
Mhm.
Whereas when you really break it down, you can say, okay, well, this is an equation. This is a uh, a blending of concepts that all create an optimal outcome. And nothing is easy if it's good. Nothing is easy to be optimal. And if you want effort from your guy, your dude, then also you should have effort towards your dude. Well, I mean, if you're two dudes, you should have effort towards each other. If you and two chicks, you should have effort towards each other, or any variation of that, right? So if it is relationship, the problem with relationships is we usually get a lopsided effort dynamic,
Mm. Yeah.
and it becomes clear. It becomes very clear. This is actually the narcissist codependent relationship because narcissists will come in and love bomb you right away and then they will use that as a weapon for the rest of the time.
Well, this segues into the deeper problem here that I think we wanted to talk about, and I think you had some data and papers to share on this. Is the okay, and now here comes the big problem, and where now we flip the switch and we're misogynist because we're blaming the women, but there
It's not
is
blaming the women, it's awareness.
exactly, there is a split here in that, to back to William, the first comment from Williamson that you shared, there is a unequal focus when it comes to effort societally, culturally. And um this oh, come on, wake up, mouse. There we go. So this leads to a video I didn't want to share, but I wanted to talk about a bit from a channel called Echo Chamberlain, because it's a half-hour video, and the title is "In Defense of Boys: Society's Damaging Narratives."
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, it is a half-hour review of adolescence, but he's using adolescence as a test case to point out what's wrong and how we got here, and how adolescence to, and you've talked about this, one is a really good show. It is a really well told story.
Mm-hmm. Well, really
But
well shot, really well acted, really well told.
mhm,
And you know what? It is a standalone. It would be something that I think should get Oscars or Emmys or whatever they give shows and not movies. I don't
yeah.
know
Yeah,
that
it'd be an
realm as
Emmy.
well. It'd be an Emmy. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, as a
it
mini
should get some
series.
Emmys. The problem is what they're using it for,
Yes.
and the people who created it did it for that purpose. They have
Yes.
explicitly said this is why we made it this way.
Yes. And essentially, kind of if I were to summarize Echo Chamberlain's thesis here, it's they correctly recognize the symptom and they completely fail on diagnosing the cause, because what they're focused on is this kid, and look how he is radicalized and is psychopathologized by the manosphere online.
Hmm.
And forget the fact that they are strawmanning the manosphere, and you brought up statistics to even point that out. uh Even though we have said this is a problem, when we talked about Tate and we showed that clip from Dr. Phil where he's interviewing a half dozen young teenage boys, and they're all like, "Oh yeah, we all know who he is. Oh yeah, we've watched, however many hundreds of his videos." So it is a concern, but it's not the terrible epidemic disaster that adolescence is trying to show, and the people using it as a political tool are trying to portray. And what Chamberlain's point is you aren't looking, you have no interest in why this boy, even this fictional boy in the story, why he would go to this section of the social media sphere to get whatever it is he is lacking.
Hmm.
You have no interest in what drove him there.
And they really actually don't even flesh that out a whole lot. They just
Mm-hmm.
like this is one of the shortcomings of the writing is these things were the things that were forced in, and they just like threw in names like Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
Whereas the real story was, wait a minute, this kid was actually bullied by this girl. This is not victim blaming.
Yeah.
This is like tracking the progression of why an outcome would happen. And that's what the whole show does is it tracks from the beginning to the end of the progression of why it happened, with the detectives going back and interviewing and putting the pieces together. And there's like 50 different topics we can come out of this with. I mean, first of all, he's a 13-year-old boy. Why should he not be an incel?
Yeah.
Incel is uh celibate, right?
Yep.
Unintentionally celibate, right? He should be celibate at 13.
Mm-hmm.
He's still going through his pee-pee's not even big yet, okay? He's just starting puberty, right?
He's just starting to feel the uh the attractions, you're just starting to notice, oh hey, chicks are different and I kind of like that.
Yeah, his balls haven't even dropped. It's
So,
like so there's that. But this is actually something Richard Reeves talks about, which might be fixed with actually holding boys back a little bit before they start school.
mhm.
Because you're not physically or emotionally there compared to girls because they mature faster.
I think that was a big positive for me that was kind of done on accident, because I my birthday falls in a place where I was either going to be, you know, if I was putting to kindergarten at the time I was quote unquote supposed to, I would have been the youngest kid in the class, the smallest kid in the class. Also, we were moving at the time because the army usually tries to move you in the summer so that when you have kids, so that you don't interrupt the school year. But we had to move uh, during the Christmas break. So my mom just decided, well, I'll just wait and put him into the school year next year so he doesn't have to start kindergarten and then leave after the first semester. So that accidentally was a big boon to me. I think that helped me significantly because I already had plenty of problems. Adolescence sucks in general, and then you
Hmm.
add on to that the moving every 3 to 4 years, and it becomes even more difficult. And having that extra time to mature physically, and then also how that goes along mentally, was a big effing deal. And
Well, and as middle-aged adults, we think of, oh, 6 months, it's not that much of difference. No, when you're
mhm,
11,
mhm.
6 months is a huge difference.
Yeah, 6 months right now
Six
is,
months
oh
could be
gosh, where'd the
3 inches
time
of
go?
height, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
But 6 months when you're a kid, especially on that borderline between older child and young adolescence, that's big. Um, and that is also one of Echo Chamberlain's points, is that uh the internet and social media is is making that maturation process much more difficult
hmm
because it is shoving mature topics into boys' faces sooner than they're ready for.
hmm
And the access to pornography is one of the things that he spends a lot of time talking about. That
which was
it's
not a thing in the show.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is a point he brings in when he's talking about the bigger point of why are these young adolescents so messed up when it comes to girls. Well, one of the problems is that they're they don't have good role models.
Well, why are girls so messed up? Let's be
Yeah, yeah.
equitable here because they think that's how they should act to seduce the boy, right?
Hmm.
And so you go out to, Washington Avenue here in Houston, and this woman sees the high caliber guy in the bar and uses sex to try to lock him in. Well, guess what, honey? You're not his girl. Or he's not your man. It's your turn.
Hmm.
That's all it is because you're trying to lock someone in using sex, and that's not the way. Because then you just basically play into the male psychopath that finds girls that are looking to lock guys down and has sex with them and then leaves.
And then you get this negative feedback loop. So you have two negative feedback loops on the female side. So let's stay there since you just started that. So that's going to reinforce that stereotype of toxic masculinity. See, that's just how guys are.
That's
They
actually a
they just
positive
use
feedback
you.
loop
I'm sorry.
because
Yes,
it's not the end result that makes it positive or negative. Is does it feed on
correct.
itself? Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
So you're creating this self-fulfilling prophecy, and then on the male side, it's um well, see, this is going to reinforce that
The
red
idea
pill
of
or
the
whatever it's
80-20
called.
rule, right? The
Yes.
20% of the guys are getting 80% of the women
Hmm.
because in that situation there is a cohort of men that get the result every time they walk in the room. And there's only so many women to go around. So the 80% that don't get that are feeding this idea, right? Whereas
And
if
then it
you
just
meet
makes you more
women,
embittered.
yeah. And if we were allowed to, which this is where, again, depending on which part of this you listen to, you're going to call me one or the other. This is where feminism effed everything up because now you can't, approach a woman in the gym. You can't
Hmm.
approach a woman in class. You can't approach a woman anywhere but in Washington Avenue where they're actually waiting for you to approach them, but you're waiting for them to approach you. So they only approach the very 20% because that's the one that geared them into action. So, or actually, the psychopaths are the only ones approaching because they don't care. They don't care what feminism says, right? So you keep feeding this, and what we need is spaces where we have things in common where people can talk and actually say, hey, you want to go out for a drink after this? Or, hey, you want some coffee tomorrow morning? Or, wow, I see you in here often. You want to do our workout together tomorrow? And it would create a more natural space where everybody has a shot, right? And we don't have that anymore because people said, that's creepy. That's the creeper. You can't do that. Not
Hmm.
here. I just want this space for me. And by the way, my tripod, and I'm going to put it on Instagram, right? So It just, we live in a world where we've ruined natural human connection, and that's part of the problem.
And it it feels like it is significantly worse in the past few years because of how ubiquitous social media has become, and so the younger generations have it even worse, but to the point where we started here. Well, now the roots of why things are so bad for the youngsters now can be traced back to when we were younger and the internet was first starting, and now those people, us, are, young to young-ish married couples, and you're having to navigate these new realities that you weren't expecting, uh, as far as how relationships go. But then also you have the problem of, is your partner one of those people who never had a positive role model, feminine or masculine, and or, was all of the feminine and masculine influences toxic?
Hmm.
So how do you navigate what the doctors were talking about last week? How do you navigate that? How do you even bring that up? And then if you do bring that up, is that person going to be what you talked about, of the no, you check my boxes or else? Are they going to be the type of person that says, no, I shouldn't be the one to have to put in the effort. It should be all you or mostly you.
Hmm.
Well, now we've got a problem.
Yeah, and we've been saying male female, but as we talked about last week, so we'll put this disclaimer on it. We'll still say male female because that's the average, but the high libido versus low libido partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the better way to think about it, but typically that is male and female driven.
Mm-hmm.
Now you brought up the internet. We just talked about it for a while. Plus, I'm going to try to make this happen because of my expectations. And my expectations is if I use sex to get this man, I can get them, when the man who's most likely to take advantage of that is the one that's going to just leave you on
Yep.
the wet spot on the sheet, right? So, uh, seeking happiness is a big part of this. And this took me down a rabbit hole, which is the second direction I wanted to go, which is the asynchronous nature of this whole situation. Because I wanted to see if there was a difference. You know what? Let me start it with a video. Let me start it with a video here. Because this is funny and humor's good. And it's an old Bill Hicks joke. Uh, and if this reaction to it was genuine, it spells it all out. If it wasn't, it's still funny. Oops, hold on. I got to share with
Okay.
sound. I made the
Okay,
rookie
Boomer.
mistake. I made the rookie mistake. Yeah, hold on. There we go. Okay, so.
Learned a lot about women. I think I learned exactly how the fall of man occurred in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, and Adam said one day, wow, Eve, here we are at one with nature, at one with God. We'll never age, we'll never die. And all our dreams come true the instant that we have them. And Eve said, yeah, it's just not enough, is
No,
Mm,
that's not funny.
I was just waiting for more.
No, that was kind of his point.
I hope that was genuine. I hope that wasn't scripted, because if it wasn't,
Yes.
that was perfect. But that old
Perfect.
Bill Hicks joke is actually part of the point, because I wanted to see if there was a male female difference on this whole what makes things asynchronous when it comes to relationships.
Uh-huh.
Because and what got me on this path was, and again, I bring up the Industrial Revolution. A good source on this is Mary Harrington. She maps this out very well. Is relationships changed, because it used to be, look back at the agricultural era where the man was out plowing and he brought in the raw products with the cotton, the wool, the corn, the wheat, all of that. And in the female made a product out of the raw materials, and they were kind of working together, kind of, and kids helped with the labor,
Yep.
that was the way it worked. But then the Industrial Revolution happened and women had to leave the home to work, and it became a different dynamic where things like childcare started coming into the picture and everything. And at that point, it started to shift where romance, the old Casanova thing, started coming into the marital satisfaction realm instead of we're getting the job done together, was the marital satisfaction realm. And so I was thinking, if okay, so I brought up this article uh, a while ago on happiness because we were talking about the internet and happiness and stuff. And can seeking happiness make people unhappy? Because it actually is true. If your goal in doing something is to be happy, you are less satisfied with your level of happiness after you do the thing. But if your goal is to do the thing because it's a good thing to do and it makes you happy, you actually have a better, more positive results. So people who seek happiness as the goal are less happy than people who seek the goal and know it might make them happy. So that I was like, okay, so this study that kind of brought this up was all female participants. And I was like, okay, so is there a difference between the two? What, and it turns out there is a lot of literature there where there is a difference between the two. And I was trying to find it specifically for marriages because what I was going on before I started that clip was, again, since the Industrial Revolution, divorce before that was the man got a divorce, if it ever happened, because of something egregious the female did, whether it was, infidelity or something along those lines. Then it started to shift to, as we got into probably the 60s, 70s, and 80s, a little bit more integration, where it was infidelity, what used to be the major reason, and then it started becoming things like money issues and butting heads over stuff like that as we got into the 80s and 90s. And now most divorces are initiated by the female, and the number one reason is not money or infidelity anymore. It is, I'm just not happy. Is the number one reason for divorce, mostly initiated by the females. So I was like, okay, that pattern exists. Why? What is it about? Is it women seek happiness more and they're unsatisfied with the results? What is going on here? And this is the one that's probably going to get us in trouble because, okay, let me preface this, and let me actually blow this up. Okay, so let me preface this with it's not the studies that social psychs do that is the problem. It is their conclusions from the studies.
I was just ranting about this
Yeah, and
not that
so
long ago.
yeah, a lot of times I'm like, I read the whole thing and I'm like, oh, okay, that was good. That was good information, good study design, da, 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 da. And then they say something about it. I'm like, no, that's not what that said at all.
I think I've referenced this before, but I was watching, I think it was like a Netflix documentary on how your pets are smarter than you think they are. And and one of the justifications for this was they had these cats do I think they've done this with rat studies for years, but basically you have like dots on one thing. You have two like trapdoors basically, and one has a number of dots and one has another number of dots, and there's a treat behind the one with more dots. So your cat knows how to count. No, 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 hold on a second. No, but
They know a
it,
visual representation that leads to more food, just like
yes,
red berry versus a blueberry, and yeah, it's just
that is more. They know more and less. Okay, cool. Yeah, of course they do. That is how
there's an
in the
easy way to
wild
solve that
they
problem.
pick off the lone one and stay away from the group.
There's an easy way to solve that problem is you have one versus three for a while till they learn three is better. And then you have two versus four, but the food is behind, or so I'm saying three versus four, and the food is still behind three. And then you just keep switching it out until they realize there's a pattern. And then you would be able, you can't just do it off the first two because it's like, oh, there's more dots here. Because I bet you if it was about counting, you would put the three versus four, and I bet you they hit the four every time if they couldn't count because they would think more dots is better.
Mm-hmm. So there you go. Much like I was ranting last time about how I can write their crap better than they can, you can design their crap studies better than they can.
Not if I want the
You're
result
welcome.
they want.
Well, that's true.
But James Lindsay can because they got published. Okay, so if you're just listening, the title of this study is Why Managerial Women Are Less Happy Than Managerial Men. So this is the closest I could get to actually marriage satisfaction. But I think it's actually pretty analogous because you have one of each sex in the same position, and they're recording happiness levels, right, based on this stuff. Okay, so we'll go down to the meat of the article. Okay, so they we'll start with the abstract here. Women with managerial careers are significantly less satisfied with their life than their male counterparts. Why? In a representative German panel data set, so this is a German study, and actually, if a little bit feels off, it's because it's a translation from German. We find biological constraints and substantive mechanisms determining the subjective well-being of female managers. Women's terminated fertility has a negative impact on women's life satisfaction between the ages of 35 and 45. So that's not terminated fertility is not having an abortion. That is the fact that, oh my gosh, it actually matters how late you have a baby on your success rate and the end results of that. But we're not allowed to talk about that. When managerial careers usually take off, which is about that 35 to 40.
Yep.
We always talk about the difference in, the hustle years. What era are you in? Are you learning, like your early 20s? Are you working? Are you advancing? And are you retiring? Kind of areas. And 35 to 45 are the hustle years when it comes to careers, which is part of the sex difference because it's also when your fertility is important, right? Money and spare time can compensate for this biological. This is where they go off the rails. Okay, so the conclusion of this study is all things the same, women are less happy in the exact same position as their male counterparts. And their conclusion is where it goes off the rails. Well, we should just pay women 10% more because that's the difference, or give them more free time to make the same money. So women want more to be happy for the same thing.
Except we already did that because, and this has been one of my rants for a long time about, feminism going off the rails and you don't want equal rights, you want special rights. Fraternal leave is just now becoming a thing. Maternal leave has been a thing for years.
Yeah, the problem is history on some of these things. And I hate using history to say what's happening now, but maternal leave was used at a time to actually discriminate for advancement as well. Like, oh, you took this time off. It's like insurance companies charging you because your car got stolen, right? They're charging you extra now because this thing happened in the past that wasn't your fault. And so that was done in the past. It is verboten now, but they still use that as a weapon to
Well, but that's there's a bit of a chicken or egg problem there. Is it used as a weapon, or does it seem like it's used as a weapon because you're expecting discrimination?
mhm.
Whereas from the business perspective, it's okay, you don't have as much experience because you have these gaps in your career because you took maternity leave. And also, as Thomas Sowell has pointed out ad nauseum, if I'm a smaller business, especially, and I know that okay, this is a woman and she is in that fertility phase, so I know at some point I'm going to have to pay for her to not work because she's
Mhm.
going to take maternity leave. Do I want to hire her? Is
Mhm.
that worth it to me? Can I afford that? So there is a bit of a chicken or egg thing there, and are you looking for discrimination? In much the same way that this
Well,
conclusion was already
but I'm going to circle
hatched
this
before they
back to
did the study.
relationships in a second. Are you looking for discrimination, or is that 10% difference your justification for your own internal dialogue? Like, oh, they're treating me bad, even though you're being treated equal, because your expectation
Yeah.
is that 10% more because you're not happy yet.
There's also a problem with the definition of happiness, which we have ranted
Well,
about ad nauseum.
there is a life satisfaction versus happiness. There are scales for these things. So,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, so now let's go back to the relationship. The asymmetry is where conflict happens. And if we'll take it just strictly sex, since that's how we started this. If man wants X amount of sex, but women want X amount of contribution on other things from man, does man have to give 10% more on everything to have X amount of sex? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is the difference in expectation based on this is just making me happy. And so when we talk about, again, romance became the forefront of relationship. How much time are you spending together? How much of this? How much of that? Now, eventually your brain is smart. The brain is a very smart thing, even if you're dumb. And you start doing the calculus in your head. I'm putting X effort in and I am getting X result or getting Y result. I'm putting X effort in, I'm getting Y result. And if one expects a certain percentage more for the same thing, then you're going to have a mismatch. So what? Do you have to find a partner that expects 10% less to be happy? Well, how do we do that? How do we do that calculus in our head in the dating scene, right? It doesn't make any sense. So what I think, so we did the female side last time. We did the telling men how to help with the female side last time. Let's tell the women how to help with the male side is understand that you have an expectation that might be above what is reality.
Yeah.
And you have to understand that. So if you have to rev your own engine up every once in a while, that's not a horrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he still expects a lot from your man. That's fine because we should expect a lot from each other because that's how you have strong relationships. I mean, I wouldn't respect somebody and I didn't expect a lot from. If I expected minimal amount from somebody, they have zero respect from me. But at the same time, understand where you are and that there might be some expectation for you. And that might not always be comfortable. Don't do anything you don't want to do, but figure out why you don't want to do it and maybe start there.
This is why most of the stuff I was going to bring up on this topic, I'm actually going to do next time when we're actually talking about Wheel of Time specifically, but in general, why young writers suck. Because of it, a lot of it is this expectation problem. And this is where stories matter because they teach these lessons at most often a subconscious level. So it's going to become ingrained in the same way that that muscle memory becomes ingrained when you do a specific task over and over and over and over again. Well, when we were growing up, we used to tell each other stories. We used to tell our children stories with quality messages that would help them for life. Whether that was a literal story with something like, the Wheel of Time, or for younger, it would be like, the Chronicles of Narnia or something like that, or The Hobbit,
Never ending
those
story.
never ending story.
Yeah.
I mean, Scarred for Life for the Swamp of Sorrows. Um, Transformers the movie. Oh my gosh, they killed Optimus Prime. And
Spoiler alert.
yeah. Um, and th this is a problem. I don't remember why this came up. I think it was because I was rewatching something and they said the phrase, but for a while back, happily ever after became a pejorative because it's, oh, you just meet the prince and then life is awesome from then on. That's not what the phrase meant. But we used to raise people smart enough to understand what that meant. That did not mean life was perfect. And that's where it became a pejorative is, oh, you just meet the prince and your life is perfect. No, that's not what they said. They said happily ever after. Ever after, they were happy. From this point on, because they had each other, their lives were happy. That didn't mean they were perfect. That didn't mean there weren't hiccups. That didn't mean they felt pleasure all the time, which is what we have redefined happiness as. That meant that overall, in general, as you trace the course of the scatter plot, it goes up.
Mm-hmm.
They were happy.
Well, and people don't remember this or even know this anymore. Grimm's fairy tales were put together by the Brothers Grimm, but they were the tales of women. That's why they're called
Yeah, that's a good point.
fairy tales, because they were the matriarchal tales that the Brothers Grimm put together in a volume.
That
And,
mothers would tell their young children to teach them lessons.
yeah, and so let's look at Snow White, the one that got butchered here. Is her learning the maternal nature she needed to take care of the dwarves made her ready for the prince. And everybody goes, oh, well, now you're making the prince all this. Well, now let's go to something like St. George and the Dragon or King Arthur
Well,
or one of these other stories that is the journey of the hero. That prince is implied in Snow White that he already had the journey of the hero. Whereas, because it was a story about the budding of a female, right? But we have something like St. George and the Dragon. He had to go prove himself to be worthy of the princess.
Beowulf.
So we get it from both sides. Beowulf, yeah, we get it from both sides. They're just separate stories. So if you wanted to make it politically correct and you wanted to change Snow White, have an arc where the prince makes himself worthy.
Yes.
In the same way,
well,
instead
so
of removing him from the story.
Here's maybe a better example, because we are talking about sex differences here, because I've got Echo Chamberlain's page up and it just made me think of it. When the crappy Disney Plus live action Peter Pan came out, Chamberlain did some really good takedowns of it, comparing it to the book, which is a children's book. And he was making the point, you guys are so effed up, you don't realize you didn't have to make Wendy a girl boss to make her the hero, because she was always the hero of Peter Pan. The point of Peter Pan is that
he's a
Peter
boy that
Pan
refuses to grow up.
He refuses to grow up. And what forces the others to grow up is Wendy, is the maternal instinct saying, no, there is something better. There is something that will make you more fulfilled than childish joy. Childish joy is temporary. True happiness comes from growing up.
Yeah, and that's the point of their relationship, Pan and Wendy. Why he actually doesn't end up with the girl at the end is because she's telling him, if you want me, you need to grow up.
Yeah. Yeah, and the people who wrote the D plus Peter Pan cannot understand this because of the opaque bubble they live in. They would look at what we're saying
I'm
here
going to add a layer,
be utterly confused.
This is why this is going to piss off the feminists too. They not only don't get it, they're also out there going, where are all the good men at?
Yep.
They don't get it, and they don't know how it works, and that's why they can't find the good men.
Because their definition of what a good man is actually
6'4", makes 6 figures, 6-pack abs, 6 inches at least.
It is unreality and or actually toxic masculinity. Because it is a warping of masculinity. It is a faux masculinity.
Well, and okay, so let's kind of tail this to kind of pull it to a close and say, you hate Andrew Tate? This is why he exists. This is why he has power. I hate him too. I mean, I try to use a rule. I don't hate people I don't know. So I hate what he stands for. I hate what he stands for, and I don't like the way he brings it about. And he's the avatar of this thing. But he exists because you exist.
He exists because you spent years calling Jordan Peterson a misogynist Austrian painter when he was saying the exact opposite of what Andrew Tate is saying. But you were so blind by your own ideology, you could not or would not see that.
When you hate because he exists, because you feel in your activism, you need to poke the bear. And the bear is going to go somewhere to find their strength. And he provides that for them. Yeah, he is a reaction to the problem.
Yep.
Yep. I mean, it's just the way it is. I wish he didn't exist either, but I understand why he exists.
Hmm.
And if unless you understand why he exists, not these straw man arguments that I keep seeing pop
Yep.
out about toxic masculinity. Okay, yeah, we can call that toxic masculinity, but you have to separate that from real masculinity. And you actually have to acknowledge the parts of him that are really masculine. Because that's if there wasn't that, then he wouldn't exist either. Because just like Robin Williams says, the best joke has an element of truth.
Hmm.
The best demagogue has elements of truth.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, what is what is something that is toxic? What is toxicity? This is the name of the channel. It is a byproduct. It is an unwanted byproduct that is a warping of what you actually want.
Which the sad
So,
thing when it comes to young men is the answer to it from the social psychs and the downstream effects of that actually makes it worse. Because male aggression is considered toxic, right? Ruminating on your feelings enhances the emotional reaction that occurs. And if you're a young male and you teach them to ruminate on their own feelings, they are going to be more aggressive, not less aggressive. So now we get to social emotional learning and all of these
mhm,
things they do in school. Oh, how are you feeling today? What are you feeling? Dwell on this feeling. Where back in our day, or just making common sense is, oh, you felt that? Is it productive? No. So find a way to channel that in a productive
yeah,
manner.
sticks and stones. That's what we used to
Yeah, yeah.
be told as kids of, oh, somebody said something. Well, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Now words are violence.
Aggression and anger can be productive. I got angry at the way that stupid management was working at the place I worked at. And aggressively, I started my own business
Hmm.
and it was successful. So aggression is good. You just have
Yeah.
to channel it in the right direction.
Well, this is our tease for next time, because this is why talking about, I mean, it is going to focus more on the male side, but this is why stories matter for boys and girls, and why even girls can be attracted to male dominated stories, because they intuitively can see, I can root for that boy, that young man in this tale, because that is someone I would like to be friends with, maybe even more than friends with, if you're growing into the age where those hormones are starting to kick.
Mm-hmm.
So you too can be not just inspire, not just inspiration, but aspiration. See something and go, that is something I would like to achieve if you're a boy, or that is something I would like to encourage if you're a girl.
Well, and it's the old adage, treat people how you want to be treated, or even better, you teach people how to treat you,
Mm,
right? So let's go back to the relationship. If your husband does X, W, and Y that you liked, there's a way to reward that,
hmm
and it's not coerced. You're using a reward system. If someone the other day we ordered pizza, which I'm trying to lose some weight, so it's not a good thing to do, but we ordered pizza and it came quick and it was hot and it was ready. And I threw an extra $20 bill on top of the tip I had already put on my card. And I said, "You did great." I gave a monetary reward to the person who did a great job, so they continue to do that for everybody else. And maybe they'll see my name on the DoorDash again next time and say, "Ooh, I'm going to get it to him quick because I might get an extra tip." It's the same. It works the same for everything. And we put a
Yeah.
taboo on it with sex, but you're married. You've already done that. Okay. You're there, right? It's not like it's new. If you're married and you've never had sex, well, other than maybe wedding night, if you're that traditional, but if you're married for a time and you've never had sex, I don't know what's going on, but it's yeah, treat people how to, and if you want a guy to be motivated to do things you like, there's one answer to the best way to do that, okay? If it's not the best answer, get him on TRT, okay? I mean, it could enhance both of your relationships, okay? But it's on the male side, we talked about those last week. What you can do to motivate her to want to do the thing you want. But if the guy's doing the things you want, motivate him. Tell them, you can even say it out loud. You did this and this and this and this, and I want you to know I love you, and let them know you love them. Okay. Well, I'll say it that way. Let them know you love them in the way that they understand. And yeah, it's a reward system. It's freaking BF Skinner and his rats. Okay. He trained pigeons to freaking map bombing routes. If he can do that, you can train your husband to do the things you want him to do, but using a reward system, not a punishment system. Not, oh, well, God, you didn't work overtime this week? Yeah. Yeah, I'm not in the mood. Or, oh, you left the garbage. I'm all of a sudden not in the mood. No, they took out the garbage. Oh, it smells so great in here. You know, we got 5 minutes. Can you do it? It's different to see how they're exact same situation, but they were two different results. Teach people how to treat you. If you want him to treat you a certain way, you have your methods. If it's not manipulation. I do think that can be taken as manipulation, but if you're using sex for nefarious reasons, that's manipulation. But if you're understanding that that's going to get a better result for your relationship, that is not manipulation.
It's not manipulation to bring home, your partner's favorite meal because they've had a crappy work week or whatever. And it's, you know what, I'm going to splurge. I'm going to stop and I'm going to get this because I know they really like it. And I've got dinner taken care of and it's their favorite. You're not manipulating, you're rewarding because you want to, because you are in a relationship. So you care about each other's happiness. Otherwise, why are you here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because realistically, if you don't have that mindset, you actually just said it a little better than I did. I kind of did the nuts and bolts of it, and then you put a little actual real context to it. Yeah, if it is a manipulative tool, then you probably shouldn't be in that relationship at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at that point, realistically, I mean, I've seen this. You're probably doing it to keep the relationship going for some reason that isn't relationship. And there's another whole avenue that goes down. So I am financially dependent on husband. So I do wifely duty to keep him around. But if you're doing it as wifely duty, well, eventually you're going to have desires yourself too. So you can still be doing wifely duty and then go handle those desires. And that's a completely different situation. And it happens all the time. It happens all the time. So that's why it has to be a two-way street.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't be going other place to get done if husband was doing things that other person did. And the other way around, husband probably won't stick around if you're not doing the thing. So if you're both doing it for the opposite of productive relationship reasons, it might be better just to cut it now, just to get on with life and be honest with each other.
Yeah. All right. Well, next time we will have fictional representations of what we're talking about.
Yes.
And why it matters.
We had new commenters last time. I meant to say this at the beginning. We will get you on the next one because it's more relevant to the Wheel of Time stuff. Mm-hmm. So love is God and God is love. God is love. And
same difference.
New one, Tangerine something. Tangerine, y'all kind of had a little scuffle there on the in the comments, but I think both of you have good points. So we'll bring that up at the beginning and you will not be ignored. So we'll get it on.
All right. We'll see y'all Saturday then.
Later.